Neon on air sign flickered red through the frosted glass door of Studio B, casting an eerie glow across the empty hallway of the Riverside Media Complex. Detective Alex Morgan pushed through the heavy soundproof door at 11:47 p.m., stepping into a world of acoustic foam, tangled cables, and the suffocating silence that only came after violence had shattered the night. Victim is Jessica Chen, 35, host of Cold Truth, one of the most popular true crime podcasts in the country. Sergeant Lisa Park briefed her as they navigated around professional recording equipment. Found dead approximately 2 hours ago by the night security guard during his rounds. Alex surveyed the scene. The recording studio was cramped but professional. 2 microphones faced each other across a small table, headphones abandoned mid-conversation. A laptop sat open, still displaying the recording software with a file labeled Live Hartwell Case Interview, Episode 127. The timestamp showed the recording had stopped abruptly at 9:23 p.m. Jessica Chen's body was slumped in the host chair, her signature purple headphones around her neck. But it wasn't the headphones that had killed her, it was the heavy-duty microphone cord wrapped tightly around her throat. The professional XLR cable that had been her tool of trade turned into an instrument of death. Any witnesses? The building was supposed to be empty, except for security. Jessica had arranged a special after-hours recording session for what she called a breakthrough interview about the Hartwell murder case from 1998. Alex examined the victim more closely. Jessica Chen had built her reputation on investigating cold cases, often uncovering evidence that law enforcement had missed. Her podcast had helped solve 3 murders in the past 2 years, earning her both fame and enemies. Where's the person she was interviewing? That's the problem, Sergeant Park said, pointing to the empty guest chair. According to the security logs, Jessica was the only person who entered the building tonight using her access card, but the recording clearly shows she was talking to someone. Alex noticed the guest microphone was still live, positioned as if someone had been sitting across from Jessica. She put on headphones and played back the last few minutes of the recording, hearing Jessica's voice with growing excitement. So you're saying you witnessed the Hartwell murder? You saw who really killed Margaret Hartwell that night? Jessica's voice was breathless with anticipation. A distorted voice responded, clearly using a voice modulator. I've kept this secret for 25 years, but I can't live with it anymore. The wrong person went to prison. Can you tell our listeners who really committed the murder? There was a long pause, then the sound of movement. I think it's time to show you rather than tell you, Jessica. The recording ended abruptly with the sound of struggle, a chair scraping, and then silence. Someone was definitely here, Alex said, removing the headphones. They just didn't use the front entrance. She walked to the studio's rear wall, examining the emergency exit door. The magnetic lock was disengaged, and she could see scuff marks on the floor leading to and from the door. The killer knew the building layout. They used the emergency exit to avoid the security cameras in the main lobby. Alex's phone buzzed with a text from the precinct. She read it and felt her pulse quicken. The Hartwell case. Margaret Hartwell was murdered in 1998. Her husband, Robert Hartwell, was convicted and served 15 years before being released on parole in 2016. Think he's our killer? Or someone who knows the real killer. We need to find out who Jessica was investigating. An hour later, Alex was at Jessica's apartment, going through her home office with the help of her roommate and research assistant, Maya Rodriguez. Maya was in her 20s with the intense focus of someone who lived and breathed true crime research. Jessica had been working on the Hartwell case for months, Maya explained, pointing to a wall covered with photos, newspaper clippings, and hand-drawn timelines. She believed Robert Hartwell was innocent, that the real killer had never been caught. Alex studied the evidence board. Margaret Hartwell had been a real estate agent found murdered in a vacant house she was showing. The prosecution had argued that Robert killed his wife for her life insurance money, but Jessica's notes suggested several other suspects. Who else was Jessica looking at? 3 main suspects, Maya said, pointing to different sections of the wall. David Morrison, Margaret's business partner, who had been embezzling from their real estate firm. Linda Walsh, Margaret's sister, who was having an affair with Robert and stood to inherit everything if Margaret died. And Detective Frank Sullivan, the original investigating officer who Jessica suspected of planting evidence. Detective Sullivan, is he still alive? Retired in 2010, but yes, Jessica had been trying to get him to agree to an interview for weeks. He kept refusing, said the case was closed and he didn't want to relitigate the past. Alex made notes. What about the other two? David Morrison died in a car accident in 2005, but Linda Walsh is still around. She remarried and goes by Linda Brennan now, lives about 20 minutes from the studio. Did Jessica have any recent contact with these people? Maya pulled out Jessica's phone, scrolling through recent calls and messages. She'd been getting anonymous tips about the case for the past month. Someone claiming to have new information, always calling from different numbers. The last call was yesterday. That's when she arranged tonight's interview. Alex felt pieces clicking together. Someone lured her to the studio with the promise of finally revealing the truth about the Hartwell case. They drove to Linda Brennan's house in the suburbs, a modest 2-story home with a well-maintained garden. Linda answered the door in a robe, looking startled to see police at nearly 1 a.m. Mrs. Brennan, I'm Detective Morgan. I need to ask you about Jessica Chen. Linda's face went pale. The podcast woman? What about her? She's been murdered. We believe it's connected to her investigation into your sister's death. Linda's hands shook as she invited them inside. The living room was decorated with family photos, including several of Margaret Hartwell from happier times. I haven't spoken to Jessica Chen, Linda said, settling into an armchair. She's been calling for weeks, but I refused to participate in her podcast that whole period of my life. I just wanted to stay buried. Mrs. Brennan, where were you tonight between 9 and 10 p.m.? Here at home with my husband. We were watching Netflix. You can check with him. He's upstairs sleeping. Alex studied Linda's demeanor. She seemed genuinely shocked about Jessica's death, but there was something else, fear, perhaps, or guilt. Mrs. Brennan, Jessica believed your sister's real killer was never caught. Do you agree with that assessment? Linda was quiet for a long moment. Detective, I've spent 25 years trying to move on from Margaret's death. Whether Robert killed her or someone else did, bringing it all back up won't bring my sister back. But if an innocent man went to prison, then that's a tragedy, but I can't help you. I wasn't there that night. I don't know what really happened. Alex sensed there was more Linda wasn't saying, but without evidence, she couldn't push further. They left with Linda's contact information and a promise that she wouldn't leave town. The next morning, Alex drove to Frank Sullivan's house in a retirement community outside the city. Sullivan was in his 70s now, a heavy-set man with gray hair and the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much during his career. Detective Sullivan, I'm investigating the murder of Jessica Chen. I understand she'd been trying to interview you about the Hartwell case. Sullivan's expression hardened. I heard about Ms. Chen on the news this morning. Terrible tragedy. But I don't know why anyone would kill her over a case that was solved 25 years ago. She believed Robert Hartwell was innocent. Robert Hartwell was guilty as sin. I put together a solid case and a jury convicted him. Just because some podcaster with no police experience thinks she knows better doesn't mean she was right. Alex noticed Sullivan's defensiveness. Did you ever speak with Jessica about the case? I refused all her interview requests. I'm retired, detective. I don't need some amateur second-guessing my work for entertainment purposes. Were you aware that she'd been receiving anonymous tips about the case? Sullivan paused. Anonymous tips about what? Someone claiming to have witnessed the murder. Someone who said the wrong person went to prison. Probably just some conspiracy theorist looking for attention. These podcast people attract all kinds of cranks. Alex studied Sullivan's face. He was trying to appear dismissive, but she could see concern in his eyes. Mr. Sullivan, where were you last night between 9 and 10 p.m.? At my weekly poker game with the guys from the precinct. We play every Tuesday night at Murphy's Bar. Started at 7, went until about midnight. Alex verified Sullivan's alibi with the other retired officers and it checked out, but something about his reaction to the anonymous tips bothered her. That afternoon, Alex was back at the studio with the crime scene team, looking for any evidence they might have missed. She played the recording again, focusing on the distorted voice of the killer. The voice modulator suggests premeditation, she told Sergeant Parr. This wasn't a spontaneous killing. Someone planned this carefully. But why kill Jessica? If they really had information about the Hartwell case, why not just tell her what they knew? Because they weren't there to provide information. They were there to stop her from finding the truth. Alex's phone rang. It was Maya, Jessica's research assistant. Detective, I found something in Jessica's files you need to see. She'd been tracking down the original witnesses from the Hartwell case, and she discovered something interesting about one of them. What did she find? A witness named Thomas Brennan gave testimony that helped convict Robert Hartwell. He claimed he saw Robert's car at the house around the time of the murder. Alex felt her pulse quicken. Brennan, as in Linda Brennan? Linda's current husband, but here's the thing. Back then, his name was Thomas Walsh. He legally changed it when he married Linda in 2003. The pieces suddenly fell into place. Alex hung up and immediately called for backup, then drove back to Linda Brennan's house. This time, Linda's husband answered the door. Thomas Brennan was a thin man in his 60s with nervous energy and darting eyes. Mr. Brennan, I need to ask you some questions about Jessica Chen and the Hartwell murder case. Thomas's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Your original testimony helped convict Robert Hartwell, but Jessica Chen had discovered some inconsistencies in your statement. I told the truth back then. Did you? Or did you lie to protect yourself because you were the real killer? Thomas stepped back, his hands shaking. You don't understand. I never meant for any of this to happen. What happened, Thomas? I was having an affair with Margaret. We were supposed to meet at that house that night, but when I got there, she was going to end it. She said she was going to tell Robert everything, ruin my marriage, my life. So you killed her? It was an accident. We argued, she fell and hit her head. But then I panicked. I made it look like a robbery, took her jewelry and purse. And when Robert was arrested, you gave false testimony to make sure he was convicted. I was protecting my family. My wife Linda had no idea about the affair. If the truth came out, it would have destroyed her. Alex realized the full scope of the deception. You married Margaret's sister to stay close to the investigation, to make sure your secret stayed buried. Linda never knew. She married me thinking I was just a witness trying to help get justice for her sister. But Jessica Chen figured it out. Thomas broke down completely. She called me last week, said she had proof I was lying about seeing Robert's car. She knew about the affair, knew I had motive. She wanted me to confess on her podcast. So you arranged to meet her at the studio. I tried to convince her to drop the investigation, offered her money to leave it alone, but she said she couldn't let an innocent man's life be destroyed by my lies. And you killed her to protect your secret. I didn't plan it. I brought the voice modulator to disguise my identity, thought maybe I could scare her off. But when she insisted on the truth, I couldn't let her destroy my life, my marriage. As Alex arrested Thomas Brennan, she couldn't help but think about the irony. Jessica Chen had spent her career giving voice to the voiceless, uncovering truths that others wanted buried. Her final investigation had exposed a 25-year-old lie, but it had cost her everything. The on-air sign in Studio B would remain dark for now, but Jessica's last recording would serve as evidence to finally free Robert Hartwell and bring his wife's real killer to justice. In the end, Jessica Chen had achieved what she'd always sought, the truth. But her pursuit of justice had led her into the hands of someone who would kill to keep the past buried. The irony wasn't lost on Alex that a woman who made her living exposing cold cases had become one herself, at least briefly. But unlike the victims Jessica had championed, her case wouldn't go cold. The truth had a way of surfacing, even when someone tried to silence it forever. Thomas Brennan would face charges, not just for Jessica's murder, but for Margaret Hartwell's death 25 years earlier. And Robert Hartwell, who had spent 15 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, would finally have his name cleared. The studio fell silent once more, but this time it wasn't the silence of secrets. It was the quiet that comes after the truth has finally been told.